Are you using the same onions every time you cook a dish? Well, there are plenty of members of the onion family, so let's talk about them today and how you might use them to mix up your dishes a little bit. I'm Susan Bowerman, registered dietitian, and usually when people get ready to cook a dish with onions, they go for the old standby, the yellow onion. And there's a good reason for that. Yellow onions have a nice balance between pungent and sweet. They hold up really well when you cook them and keep their shape. And that's the reason that most people will use these common yellow onions in just about any dish that calls for onions. But maybe when you're at the store, you've also seen white onions. What are these good for? Well, you can cook with white onions. They're more pungent. But one of the reasons people love white onions is because they're a little more tender than the yellow ones. So they're strong, but they're not so hard to bite into like the yellow onions are. So these are great in raw dishes. That's why people use white onions in things like salsas, because it gets that pungency without being too difficult to chew. What about the purple onions? These happen to be my personal favorite. Why do I like them so much? Because purple onions are mild and sweet, and they're so good to use in raw dishes. I use these often in my salads. I love to put them on top of cooked vegetables and just let them soften a little bit. So they're very sweet. They're not nearly as strong as the other ones. You can cook with red onions if you want to, but they tend to lose their color and they're not nearly as strong. But if you're not an onion fan and you don't want a lot of strong flavor, you might want to try these in one of your dishes. Now, the other thing about onions people always ask is, how do I cut one? Well, let me show you the best way to do this. People are always concerned about getting tears in their eyes when they cut onions, and I have tried every method to not cry when I eat onions. So I've tried putting an unlit match in my mouth, I've tried goggles, I've tried putting them in the refrigerator, but I think the best thing to do is to learn how to cut an onion and how to do it quickly, and then you don't really have to worry about too many tears. When you look at your onion, it's got two ends. It's got this end here, this is the root end, this hairy end here, these are the roots, and this is the stem end. And generally what you want to do when you cut your onion is just to cut these two ends off. And I've already done that. I've taken my onion, I've cut the ends off, I've peeled this outer papery skin, and what I'm left with is this onion half. Now, when you're cutting your onion, a lot of people like to cut it this way to get these slices, and that's fine if you're going to use it raw, maybe and put on a sandwich or on top of a salad. But if you're going to cook an onion, the best way to slice it is really from the top to the bottom. Remember, I had my root end and my stem end, and you're going to slice it this way. And the reason that you slice it this way if you're going to cook them is because when you do that, your slices are more even in size, so they'll cook more evenly when you're putting them into your cooked dish. It's a minor point, but it does make a difference when you're cooking. So again, I use that with the red onion. You'll use the same technique whether it's yellow or whether it's white. Now, the other member of the onion family that people use often is garlic. And here I've got a garlic head. When you buy garlic at the market, usually the one that you're most likely to get is going to be what they call a soft neck garlic. And that means that when you open up your whole head of garlic, that the cloves separate fairly easily. If you ever find a stiff neck garlic, there's going to be a stiff stem that goes all the way through. One of the reasons that those are nice if you find them is the cloves are nice and large. These sometimes you get a lot of smaller pieces, but these are pretty nice. Now, the easiest way to open up a clove of garlic, it's very simple, is take your garlic clove, put it on your cutting board. You're going to lay your blade of your knife flat on your garlic carefully, and you're just going to give it a good whack with the heel of your hand like this. Okay? When you do that, what that does is that just loosens this skin, and you can just peel that if you want. You can cut this little end off right here, and you've got this perfect clove of garlic. So you're ready to dice it for your dishes. I like to use a grater because I just think it's a really easy way to put the garlic in, but that's what you want to do with your garlic. Now, another member of the onion family that you may not use very often is shallot. Shallots are something that people don't use as much as they should. You know, I heard a chef on the radio one day and he said, you know, if you want your food to taste like restaurant food, use more shallots. And the reason is they're a wonderful blend between garlic and onion. They're not that strong. You can cook with them, but they're also delicious raw. These are wonderful in salads. And when you cut into a shallot, it's going to look very much like a mini onion. So again, You can cut off the top and you can cut off the bottom. And again, you'll have this papery skin to tear off. And when you've removed all of that, what you end up with are things like this that look very much like very small onions, but they're not nearly as strong. They just add a wonderful, wonderful flavor. If you saute these and put them on top of some cooked chicken or cooked fish, they're just delicious and really make a wonderful addition to a vinaigrette. Now, there are a couple other ones I want to talk about. One is the green onion. Some people call them spring onions. There's actually a tiny difference. A spring onion actually has a little bit of a bigger bulb at the bottom. It's a minor difference. But these green onions are usually done in such a way that they're very straight all the way down. They don't have a big bulb at the bottom. These are delicious raw. You can put them into stir fries as well. And they're very, very easy to prepare. The only thing you really need to do is to just cut off this root end here. Sometimes when you buy them at the market, this end might look a little dried out, so if you want, you can cut that end off too. And then you're set. What you can do is what I like to do is just cut them like this and just into small dices. You like to add these to salads. As I said, they're good in stir fry. These also make a nice garnish if you have soup because it just adds a little nice fresh flavor right at the very end. So these are great. You should use these more often if you haven't. And then the last one I want to talk about is the leek. This is probably the least used of the onion family, and I wish people would get more familiar with them. I think part of it is that they don't really know quite what to do with it because it looks sort of like a giant green onion, but it's not. And the thing is that this part of the leek is very tough, and so you do end up throwing quite a bit of it away. But to prepare a leek, what you want to do is you're going to want to cut off, again, this root end. And usually you're going to use primarily just the white part, so I'm going to cut it right about here. Now what I love about leeks is that when they cook, they get very soft. They're not very strong in flavor, but they add a wonderful, unique sort of oniony taste to your dishes. But one thing you need to know about leeks is that you can see these concentric rings here. They tend to get very muddy inside, so you have to be really careful when you clean them. If you're going to keep your leeks into rings, which a lot of people do, you could cut them into chunks about like that. And you can see right here, see? That's just the mud that's come splashed up from when they've been washed, but it gets up into all of those layers. I think the easiest thing to do is to just cut them in half. And that way you can start to separate the pieces, give them a quick rinse under water, and you can be sure to get all that mud out. So, next time you have a recipe and it calls for an onion, instead of just automatically grabbing that standard yellow onion, pick up a white onion or a red onion or a leek or a garlic or shallot, and you may just come up with a unique dish that's all your own.